Hi, I'm Michelle, Director of Educational Content and Programs at Shape America. And if you want to learn more about health and physical education, you are going to love ToyTalk Tuesdays. And I'm not talking about these kinds of toys. I'm talking about Teachers of the Year. Shape America Teachers of the Year represent the best adapted physical education, dance, health, and physical education teachers in the United States, and you get to hear directly from them. So make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to comment below with the tips and resources you want to hear about most. If you're interested in learning about how to become a Shape America Teacher of the Year, just make sure to click the link right here below. Thanks so much for watching. Everyone, and welcome to Toy Talk Tuesday. My name is Michelle Carter, Director of Educational Content and Programs at Shape America, and I am so excited to be hosting today's Toy Talk Tuesday. So today's segment, our Toy Talk Tuesday, is a bi-weekly series of interviews about topics in health and physical education with Shape America's National and District Teachers of the Year. And today's segment is going to focus on how to virtualize lessons, and specifically Health Moves Minds lessons. So we'll be sharing activities and tips and tricks that you can use right away in your classroom or when you're developing your lessons. So today I'm joined by LaDonda Porter, and I will give her a chance to introduce herself.
Thank you, Michelle. Hello, again, my name is LaDonda Porter. I'm a physical education teacher at Beaumont Middle School, where I have been teaching my entire career for the past 14 years. I've had the honor and privilege of representing the great state of Kentucky as the 2018 Kentucky Shape Middle School Toy, and also the pleasure of being 2020 Shape Southern District Middle School Teacher of the Year as well.
Yes, kudos to you. So, as members of the Shape America Teacher of the Year community, you have a unique platform to share your expertise, your talents, and leadership with health and physical education teachers across the country. And we're so proud of you and your accomplishments. I've been seeing all the amazing things that you've been doing. And so just a little background about how we got to this. LaDonda, late summer, right before school started, she reached out to me and said, hey, I want to share with you what I'm planning to do with my students in regard to the Health Moves Minds lessons and how she adapted them. And immediately I was like, these are amazing lessons, and I need you to do a Toy Talk Tuesday so you can share with everyone what you did, and so that even if they can learn how to do it too. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it back to LaDonda so she can get into it.
All right. So yes, once again, I knew going into the school year, the first unit I wanted to hit was something about social and emotional learning. And it's great that Health Moves Minds is already out there for us to use. So I just thought to myself, after I saw the remote learning option, I was like, what can I do to truly make this virtual for my students? And so that's how I came up with this concept of how to virtualize it. And it could be used for actually any lesson, not just for Health Moves Minds. So I hope the least out of this with this agenda is once we dissect one of the Health Moves Minds lessons for remote learning, I hope that you can actually utilize one of the tools presented to virtualize any lesson that you may be doing. So that's going to be our topic of discussion for today. So the problem was when I actually started tackling the Health Moves Minds is how can I truly make it all virtual? So I wanted to give them as close to the same experience as being in person with Health Moves Minds, but I wanted all the activities to be able to be done in class. So I really didn't want to turn them loose to have them to do anything when class was over. I wanted them to do everything with me within the 50 minutes that we have. So that's how long my classes last every single day, or 50 minutes a day for 5 periods of day. So first of all, when I was addressing the lessons, I looked at each of the lessons that Health Moves Minds had to offer, and I had to do a little bit of rearranging because the way that my lessons are set up, we do a 4-part lesson. We have an intro activity to kind of get us warmed up and ready for the day, and it can or cannot relate to whatever the overall lesson is. We do a fitness focus, and then we move into the lesson focus, which is basically the meat and potatoes of the lesson, and then we finish out with a closure before I send them on about their day. So when I looked at the Health Moves lesson, actually we're going to look at lesson 1. This is what I would typically see. And this is probably what you all see too as well when you see that Health Moves Minds lesson. So this is for middle school 6th through 8th. And lesson 1, of course, it has all of the activities that you can utilize to teach that particular lesson. So you had a warm up, you also had a mindful minute, a team building activity, it had another learning activity 3, and a closure. So then when I looked at that particular lesson, what I had to do was move it around to make it work for my students. So the intro activity was the same. So we still did the kind of a warm up. I actually moved the lesson 3 activity up to my fitness focus and kind of meshed it to make it work, to make it a fitness focus. Then I did a build a structure, which is also in lesson 1. And I did utilize the mindful minute, but my mindful minute was done in a little bit different of a fashion than what the Health Moves Minds wanted the mindful minute to do for lesson 1. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. So with the intro activity, the kind of a warm-up, it's the same concept as the virtual, but instead of me live streaming the lesson and then private messaging the kids the kind message that I wanted them to have, I actually had my students do it all together. So instead, I had them jog in place with a cue, and then the cue told them to rest. And when they actually rested, I presented a kind message card. The kids had the option to try to memorize it if they could. If they couldn't, then they could jot it down. And we just continued for an allotted time that I gave for that particular activity. And at the end, the discussion questions from the Health Moves Minds lesson stayed the same as it was in person, but we just did it in a virtual setting. And I'll get to that closer to the end on how I use those discussion questions. So this is what my kind of a warm-up lesson looked like. So I kind of, used a lot of different things with YouTube and things that I have found and kind of Google Slides and put it together to make it work as one activity. So when the students actually participated in this, I gave them a prompt as to when they would have to start jogging. And then these are the actual kind messages cards that came from Health Moves Minds. So when the activity told them when to jog, they would work and jog for 10 seconds while the kind message cards would scroll. And then when it was time for them to take a break, I would then pause. And that's with the kind message card that they would jot down. And we would continue that until the activity was over. So that kind of gives you an idea of how my warm-up worked out. And if you're like, Porter, how in the world did you do that? Quite simple. So on this slide shows you the steps that I took to create this particular activity. So I created a Google Slides and took each of the Health Moves Minds kindness cards, kind of cropped them, fit them into the slideshow until I had all of the Health Moves Minds cards for the kindness, kind of a warm-up segment put in there. And then you can actually publish it to the web. And then when you publish it to the web, which you can use this YouTube link to show you how to do so, I then used a screen recording called Loom. You've probably heard of Screencastify. It's kind of along the same lines. So once I created the random cards in Google Slides, I recorded in Loom and just kept letting it scroll for 5 minutes, uploaded it to my YouTube channel, and that's how I came up with the video clip that you saw previously. And again, all of these instructions will be sent out to you all if you want to try to work and play with it to see how to create your own kindness cards for this particular activity. From there, we moved into our fitness focus. So I skipped over a couple of the lessons in the Health Moves Minds, and I went straight to the kindness versus negative message. So this way I can actually have my kids participate in a fitness focus, but still stay along the same lines of what the lesson was wanting to deliver. So I still took those kindness cards, and then I added in the negative cards and still plugged it into the Google Slides the same way, published it to the web, recorded on Loom, just let it run, and then I embedded it into a slideshow. So then I made this activity like a Tabata workout. So students were given an exercise if Miss Porter drew a kindness card, and then if they would get a different exercise if I actually gave a negative message card. Again, we continued for the allotted time, and then at the end of the activity, I used the same discussion questions from the Health Moves Minds lessons so that we can kind of reiterate what the purpose of the activity was. So it looks a little bit like this. So again, you see the message cards. I embedded a Tabata songs that I found straight from YouTube, and the kids just participated in the activity as I presented it on the screen. So the cards would just scroll through. The kids knew based on the prompt. I would draw the card. They see that it's a kindness card. So whatever exercise I had for the kindness card, they would demonstrate for the time that the music would allot. And we would just continue until the workout was over. Then we moved in. Again, here is how we actually broke down the kindness and the message card. So again, this is step by step how you would do it to create it for this lesson or any lesson that you choose to use to virtualize the lesson. Again, step by step. And then we moved into our lesson focus. So with the lesson focus, the builder structure in person, you would put the kids in groups. You would have them work on building a structure together and learn how to give kind compliments to one another as they were working on building the structure. Same purpose, but I had the kids actually work individually. So for me, I wanted them to practice giving kind messages to each other, and then they were to go back and reflect on some of the kind messages that were given to them based on the structures that they built. So I actually created a Google slideshow for each class, went through and put their name on each slide, shared the link with my students. The students would then click on the link, go into the Google slide, find their particular slide in the slideshow, and they would build their structure. Once they built their structure, they would then go through and scroll through the slideshow, and they would try to find 3 other students. And I really reiterated to them, I wanted them to find people that they normally wouldn't talk to and give them a compliment. And then after they did their 3 compliments, and it couldn't be, nice job. No, they really had to base it on what they saw in particular that the student did when they built their structure. So they really had to dig deep into looking at the structure and giving them a compliment based on that. And then after they did their 3 compliments, they would go back, look at their slide, and take a look at the compliments that they were given. And sometimes as the teacher, I would go through myself and scroll through, and I would give compliments to students as well as to the type of structures that they built, because they have some really awesome structures that they built, because the creativity was through the roof. So again, here is the slideshow that I would share with my students. They all had the same type of equipment, which is basically the same stuff that they have you use in Health Moves Minds. And I would just put different slides for different people. This is my family, so this is kind of like my demo one so that you all can see. And so they would then go through and decide how they want to set up their structure, and everything is movable and editable and however they want to do it. And then from there, the students would go to insert a comment, and they would pop up on the side where they can type in what they saw about the student structure, and then they would move on to the next student. So for the example to show, this is kind of a snapshot of what one of my kids have done. And they would go in and say, I like how the hula hoop at the bottom is balanced. I mean, they would really look at these structures and give them some good feedback or some positive comments about it. So again, the closure piece, which was the final piece of the lesson, I did not use the emoji rating scale like in lesson 1. I actually did not introduce that until lesson 3. But prior to Health Moves Minds, my current 7th and 8th graders that I've had last year already knew about us doing a mindful minute at the end of my classes. The use that I had for them is actually to bring them back down to pre-PE levels before they transition for the rest of their day. But later on in the unit, in lesson 3, that's when I actually started going into more detail about what the purpose of the mindful minute and how it can be used other than us bringing ourselves back down to pre-PE levels before they transition on to the rest of the day. So again, I was telling you all how I took some of those discussion questions from the Health Moves Minds lesson, and I used it as an assessment piece for my students. So what I did is I created a Google form, and I used the scenario questions that were offered in Health Moves Minds. One of them was about Nico studying for a test, but he didn't get a good grade, and the students would answer some prompt questions based on that. Or they could talk about Melissa, who wanted to try out for the volleyball team, but she was nervous. So they got to choose which discussion question they wished to answer. So this gives you an idea of what the reflection looks like. So again, the students would put in their name, their class period. Then I gave them the option to choose which one of the scenarios they wanted to answer. So if they chose Nico, it would take them right to scenario 1 about Nico. Or if they choose to want to talk about Melissa's, then it would actually send them to Melissa's scenario, and they would take the time to actually answer it before they submitted it to me for a part of their daily grade. So that pretty much is how I took Health Moves Minds and virtualized it for in-class remote teaching for my 6th through 8th PE students. I want to thank you all for taking the time to check out this Toy Talk with Miss Porter. If you have any questions, I can be found on Twitter at lporterpe, or you can send me an email at ladonda.porter@fayette.kyschools.us. Thank you all.
Thank you. That was awesome. I loved seeing it in action. What a wonderful way, especially even that assessment piece at the end, how you can use that form to get them to check in. So, hey, those are good tips for people to use and to think about even with their own assessment. And then when you have the spreadsheet, you have everything right there.
Absolutely.
This is why everybody, I needed her on here because it was so good. So thank you on behalf of Shape America and the Shape America Teacher of the Year Partner Network for you to take your time. I know you're busy right now with teaching and with your own children, navigating everything. So we deeply appreciate you taking the time to do this. So everyone who's listening, be sure to visit www.shapeamerica.org to check out our biweekly Toy Talk Tuesday segments for more great resources. And we'll put up that resource that LaDonda shared to how to do some of these things, and so that you can take your time and go through it. But just to be able to see it in action is really important to get an idea. Be sure to watch at Shape America, at Spark Phys Ed, at Gopher Sport, at WellTrain _co, and at GW Publisher to share ideas for future Toy Talk Tuesday topics and themes. And as always, if you have any questions that you may have for our Shape America Teachers of the Year, you have her contact information. You can tweet me, tweet Shape America. And we want to hear your ideas for resources from our toys. So thank you so much for watching. And again, thank you, LaDonda. Love being able to connect with you briefly today, and have a good day. Oh